So with that, let's get started. So why is it important to consider this topic of optimizing workflow? Well, it increases productivity and output if we can get more done in less time. It also reduces our sense of stress and avoids us getting burnt out or feeling overwhelmed if we're able to keep up on a daily basis with what we've set ourselves to achieve, but also what we have to do. And in that way, it enables a more significant mission impact, both for the organization you work for, but also in terms of your own personal development goals. So at a starting point, what I would do is encourage you. A key part of today's session is always maintaining a curious mind. So what does that mean? It means we embrace the idea of growth, and we always seeking out opportunities to learn, and we want to stay updated with trends and best practices. We live in a very fast changing world, and there's always new information, and people are finding better ways to do things. So at this point, I just welcome some participation from those in attendance, and we're going to have a check-in poll. So here are 3 questions that you can please respond to, and it'll get us into an idea of what you and the audience are experiencing in terms of these areas. So in the first question, what type of resource is your preferred medium for learning? Do you prefer books, hard copy books about productivity and time management? Do you prefer online resources and webinars? Is your particular interest in using an app or particular software to assist with you being more efficient? Do you enjoy podcasts or YouTube channels? Then the second question, what's your biggest challenge in maintaining work-life balance? Unplugging after hours, managing stress and avoiding burnout, finding time for personal development, balancing multiple projects and responsibilities. So obviously, one might want to answer 2, but we want to get the most critical answer. So just select 1 for each question. And then finally, how comfortable are you using AI tools to assist your workflow? Very comfortable. I use them regularly. Somewhat comfortable. I've tried a few. Curious but hesitant. I need to learn more. Not comfortable. I prefer traditional methods. So we're getting responses coming through. We've got 36% participation. If we could just vote or select your choice. 45% of you have answered. If another 4 people could just select your answers. We had 54%, 63%, 72. If you can just cross 75, it'll be good. The results are looking interesting. Okay, I'm going to call it. Oh, we're at 81%. Thank you for that last bit of participation. So there we have the results. Um, okay, that's very good. Lots of you prefer the more old school hard copy approach to learning. There's also an equal balance of those preferring online and webinar. I like that there's an interest in podcasts and YouTube. I personally love those. Yes, in terms of managing work-life balance, finding time for personal development is often a challenge, and managing stress and avoiding burnout. So I hope today's session and some of the tips will be helpful in that regard. I like it. A lot of people are curious but hesitant. They want to learn more. I think that's a good place to be. Mustn't be overconfident in AI. Respect its limitations, but it's the way of the future, and it's not going away. So great. Let's carry on. Okay. So this is in terms of search engines. There's a lot out there, but Google is dominant. And in terms of my experience, I'm better equipped to offer suggestions on improving your Google search results. And I know that a lot of people use Google, so I hope this will be helpful to most of you. So we want to be able to optimize our search results and target exactly what we're going to get from it. So under search, there are options to select different kinds of categories that you're looking for. Like you could be only looking for PDFs or JPEGs, and you can actually, in the advanced settings, set that out. And at a later stage, if you don't feel comfortable exploring this yourself, we could consider a more practical session. But these are some kind of shortcuts that you can do. So, for example, if you're within a site, you can search for specific things within that site only by opening the Google Advanced Settings tab. Also, in your actual main search bar, you can put the instruction there. So, for example, you can say, I'm looking for file type, PDF on project management. Then the results that are going to be filtered to you are going to be more specific. Say you're looking for specific keywords within a title. So then you can say in title, nonprofit fundraising strategies. You might want to exclude a specific word. So let's just use the example of I'm looking for a coffee shop, but I don't want Starbucks. So then you would say coffee, and then the minus sign. Don't write it like that in brackets. I'm just pointing out that it's not a dash. So you'd put minus, no space, Starbucks. Then your results will only be other coffee shop companies. And you could do that for anything if you want to exclude certain results from your search result. You could look for an exact phrase. So when you use parenthesis or those two commas, then that will look for a specific phrase on Google. So for example, time management techniques. You can also look for things that are within a certain time period. So say generally in research terms, if you're looking for stuff regarding research, you don't want things that are older than 10 years. You want more up-to-date information. Best practices generally within the last 5 years. So then you can say nonprofit trends after 2022 and before 2023, for example. You can also use the words or in capital letters to denote that you are searching for either of two terms, so volunteer or donate opportunities. And then in our context as nonprofits, I would encourage you to use .edu or .gov or .org sites as organizations or information that you're going to cite as being authoritative. And then always cross-reference your information. You find something on Google, but or on another search engine, but we have to be aware that there's always counter arguments, and there's always different opinions. So we want to get a sense of the consensus understanding of something. Now, just another thing before we get into the technology aspects of optimization, we also want to emphasize self-management. So there's a very human aspect to optimization that's beyond technology. And this is about the power of routines. Establish your routines, manage your personal time, and have a weekly or monthly review process. This doesn't have to be anything like a written exercise or anything, but just sitting and thinking, how did I do this week? How did I meet my targets? How did I meet my goals? Then, of course, effective goal setting. Sometimes people write to-do lists, but they can be unrealistic. And it's always important to remember SMART. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Always try to break your goals into smaller little chunks. As they say, you eat an elephant one bit at a time. That also helps manage stress. And if you get incremental achievements, like climbing one step at a time, each step that you climb is rewarding you and motivating you to take the next step. Also, effective delegation is important, and we all work in teams. And if there's something that can be delegated, we should communicate clearly our expectations and deadlines, and provide the resources and support needed so that we all function optimally. Now let's get into some specifics of technology. So your computer is, in some ways, in its hardware, much like ourselves, it needs to sleep. So I would encourage you to switch off your machine on a daily basis and restart it. The hardware generally just functions better when it's fully switched off and rebooted. Otherwise, if you go into sleep mode, a lot of background functions are still saved in the memory, and that can slow the performance of your machine down. Explore digital learning. So this goes back to maintaining a curious mind. So when it comes to 365, which I'm sure a lot of people tend to use, I know there are those out there that use Google among our partners. I'm not too equipped to speak to that beyond some of the other features as a search engine, etc. But so we have Teams, we have SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. Encourage you to always keep that curious mind, look around. You're not going to break the software. If you want to practice on a specific document or Excel, use that as a practice one, save a copy, and be experimental in your approach to learning the full features of a application. There's also YouTube tutorials, plenty of them. So I believe that one can train oneself. There's a lot of free resources out there. There's also templates that Word, PowerPoint, and Excel offer, and then one can customize those for your purposes. And sometimes that's an easier starting point. With PowerPoint, there's also the designer feature, which gives you layouts based on its AI. These are some helpful shortcuts that I always find enable one to do things more quickly. So Control F is a shortcut for find, Control C, copy, Control V, paste, Control X, cut, Control P, print. And then you also, if you're looking for a document in your Explorer on your Microsoft machine, then always good to have logical filing names and use the search bar in perhaps a folder that has many documents. Then you can retrieve the document that you're looking for. Now we'll go into a little bit more detail specifically about Teams and Outlook, and I'm sure a lot of you know some of this. Teams is a great place for communication and collaboration, video calls, screen sharing like we're doing today over Zoom, file sharing. You can also integrate your apps into these things, like say you're using Grammarly for your grammar and spell checking, you can integrate it into these utilities. When it comes to Outlook and improving your efficiency and optimization, consider using rules. For example, you can, if there's a sender that you don't want to miss any emails from, you can set up a rule that their emails go into a specific subfolder. So when it comes time to checking emails and you've got lots of emails to check, then you can easily know that the most important sender, you're going to go and look at the emails from their folder. You can set up flags, reminders, color code your emails. Also, in some environments, one can rather choose, if you're working after hours, to schedule the email to send during work hours. That's an approach that some people may like to take, so as not to infringe on others, a sense of that they needed to also be working after hours. We always want to be mindful of other people's well-being and stress. Then we can consider app integrations, where we look for Grammarly, for example, but there's a lot out there. So you can apply for a non-profit discount with a lot of these applications. I'd also encourage you, if you're not already registered with TechSoup, register with them, provide them with your non-profit information, and that gives you eligibility for discounts on various softwares. There's also a direct application to Microsoft where, for example, you can get discounted 365. You may, if you want to run campaigns on Google, want to apply for a Google AdWords grant, and that gives you free advertising up to a certain threshold, where you can promote your website on search engine results, etc. So let's get more specific in terms of some suggestions for Word. Create templates. If there's documents that you regularly do, like for, in my case, proposals, in someone else's case, it may be a contract, we can set up predefined templates with all the styles and sections already in place. Further to this point, we can customize our headings. Say we want a specific size, font, and table size, etc. All the different formatting you'll see on the middle bar where it's got normal text, heading, etc. You can customize each of those in a template document so that you don't have to do it over and over again. Consider adding quick parts if there's a piece of text that you regularly use, for example, your mission statement for your organization, then you don't have to paste it in from another document. It's already saved in your Word profile and you can quickly add it. Learn time-saving shortcuts. Here's some more. We've already covered the others. Control S is save. Control H is if you are looking for replace. And then the replace tab will just pop up. And then when it comes time to sharing documents and reviewing and comments, use the track changes features effectively. and accept or reject or resolve comments or provide further feedback. These tools enable us to communicate wherever we are, in whatever time we are, and that can improve our efficiency. Some things on Excel. So for example, using Control T, you can quickly convert ranges into tables. One should be aware of critical functions that are very common, like sum or average or count or VLOOKUP to find a specific point of data, or you can use if you're using conditional logic, for example. Pivot tables can help summarize data by type and other categories. You can use, if you're visually focused in terms of colors, you can use conditional formatting to highlight certain terms in the same colors. Bear in mind that then the term has to be written exactly. If there's a capital letter somewhere, that capital letter has to be the same elsewhere for it to pick up the conditional formatting and be able to give you the right highlighting of features. And then there's also a common one that people use. Say you've got a whole lot of contacts in an Excel and you need to send them the same email. You can set up a macro, and that's an easier way of sending out an email. Just also be aware, if you're using an IT service provider, you should perhaps inform them ahead of sending out a bulk email so that various spam features don't block your email and freeze your inbox, just so that you can have a temporary increase on the amount of emails you can send at once. Again, I'll just reiterate that at a later stage, we can do practical demonstrations on each of these, but this is just to get your thinking started around some of these things and the kind of possibilities to improve your efficiency. PowerPoint. So it's always good to have a well-designed sense of your branding and slides that are uniform and standardized. So you add your logo. You can also use master slide, which then edits the background of all your slides. So when you do new slide or you select a different slide layout, then you've predefined all those layouts that you wanted, where you wanted your logo. Perhaps you wanted a slide number, other features that are going to be constants on your slides that you don't have to keep on formatting. So for example, in this presentation that I'm giving the specific format of my headings, all in the same color, all in the same size, and the Seriti logo in the upper right corner. So that is an example of using master slide to set up your background layout. Also consider the 5 by 5 by 5 rule. So no more than 5 bullets per slide, 5 words per bullet, and no more than 5 text-heavy slides in a row. I must admit this presentation might violate this rule a little bit. There is a lot of content to cover today, because I wanted to give you a broad introduction of this topic of optimization. Consider enhancing your slides with multimedia, and by that I mean icons, smart charts. You can use tables if you're looking at numerical data. You can embed video clips to a YouTube video. There's a variety of things that you can do to enhance the presentation and relatability of your presentations. Another thing is that if you have prepared notes on your slides, particularly if there's a lot of technical information that you need to keep in mind, but it's not on your slide, then if you use presenter view, then you'll be able to see your notes while the viewers see only the slide presentation. Now, some general things about SharePoint and content management. A lot of companies are moving to the cloud as servers have a lifespan and it can be costly to replace them. There's also greater security protection on cloud-based servers. So that's why I'm speaking to the SharePoint platform. So it provides a central place for document and file storage. It's available everywhere. You don't have to be in the office on a local server. A lot of the great features of updated Microsoft is the version control. You can see previous versions. You can see who edited the document when. And that way, if you want to revert to an older form of the document, you can and download a copy. It's also secure in terms of sharing because of permissions, etc. You can, on SharePoint, also create different pages and teams and separate by relevant department or content. And that's a good way to navigate a server. Now on to something quite exciting, leveraging AI assistance. So the ones that I'm most familiar with are the language models, but you get AIs for pretty much everything. You get AIs that generate images. Unfortunately, a lot of these are not free yet. The language model AIs tend to be the ones that are free. You also get AIs that can assist with quantitative data analysis, but the language models can also do it to a limited extent. So you could consider using AI to draft emails quicker. If they're not very important emails and you just put the bullets into your natural language AI model, tell it that you want to send an email to so-and-so, and then it drafts the email, and then you can customize it and edit your text. That's one way to save time. You can use it as a research assistant. So, for example, in the good old days, we had to read a research paper line by line and every single detail. And obviously that is still relevant in certain cases, especially if you are producing research, you need to know fully what the authors said. But if research is not your goal and you just simply want to know what people are saying on a topic, you can upload the PDF of a paper and simply ask for a summary. And that might be a far more efficient way in terms of how you spend your time. If it's not a critical thing or particularly related to your industry, but you're just interested in learning and you want to enhance the speed at which you learn and acquire general information, then AI can be a good resource there in terms of summarizing uploaded PDFs. You can also consider it as a sounding board. So work that you've prepared or documents that you've laid out, you can upload those and say, is my sequence logical? Are there missing aspects that I could consider? And then it may respond with, these are the strengths of your article, or these are the strengths of your document, these are possible areas of development, and these things are missing. You can also ask it to check your logic, and you can also ask it to check whether you're saying anything totally contrary to the consensus understanding about things, and then it may come back with some criticisms and suggestions for how you can improve. And then again, I just put my personal experience with ChatGPT and Claude. They're very helpful natural language AIs. Something to bear in mind is that it only gives you what you input. So it responds to the language that you give it. That's how it works. So it works on word associations. And so based on your input prompt and the accuracy of the information you give it and the background and exactly what you are wishing to receive from it, and also the detail you give, that will determine the quality of the output. So if you ask it very general questions, it's only going to come back with general answers. And also, in such cases, it may not give you a defined sort of suggestion because it picks up that you're being vague, so it responds in a vague way itself. Okay, a little bit on to more personal management, our minds, and how we manage ourselves. So we really need to be cognizant of time. And as the expression goes, tempus fugit, time flees. It often feels like we don't have enough time, but that might be changeable based on changing our perception. So set goals for the day, realistic goals always. Decide whether you prefer the digital tools or maybe you want to stick to analog tools like a notepad and a pen. Me personally, I love using the full features of certain of these utilities, but in terms of my to-do list and taking notes, I much prefer the old-fashioned paper and pen. That's just up to preference, and one sort of has to decide what works for you best. Time box tasks. So give yourself a specific amount of time to do something and be on the clock. We all know if we've written exams, how much we can write in that allocated amount of time when our body and mind know that we've got only 2 hours or 3 hours to answer all these series of questions in an examination. And it can be surprising how much one can generate when under pressure. So put the pressure on yourself, I would suggest, before someone else does. At least then you can move the goalpost when things are not working out, if you suddenly have run out of energy or you're just not creative, and actually you should put the task for another day when you're feeling up to it. Also take breaks. These can be short or your longer lunch break, but stand up, stretch, get the body moving and change that perspective. Get away from the screen, let your eyes look at a distance, and then get back to your work. Make to-do lists. I really encourage making to-do lists and make them every day. You don't have to finish them. Move the items that are not finished onto the next list, but always remember to put a set of things that you have to do in terms of long-term goals and what I need to do today, what I want to do this week, items that I have for the month, items that I have for the quarter. So this way we can do a to-do list for the quarter, but we can do on a daily basis a daily to-do list. When it comes to multitasking and single tasking, so I'm a believer in both, but I believe one has to be very focused when it comes to distinguishing between multitasking and single tasking. So I think in the course of a day, if you've got a big project to work on, then allocate a day when you don't have other interruptions and single task that task. Focus on getting that thing done in a fixed amount of time and don't let yourself get distracted. If, on the other hand, you have another series of admin tasks or numerical tasks or repetitive tasks, you may want to consider setting aside a multitasking day for such activities. Then your mind is in multitasking mode and you are jumping from one thing to another, and each thing is giving you energy to keep you going. But if you try and do deep work in terms of reading and writing and research, and reflection and planning, and you are juggling that with other small lower priority tasks, you are going to lose time every time you get into your big, deep task again, because your mind has to reset, it has to move into a different gear of thinking, and then you're not using your time efficiently. A practice that I personally would recommend is reflection every day. So this is not a self beat up session. This is about taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes to congratulate yourself on the things you did well, but also identify the things that you could improve on. Switch off, go to enjoy your own personal time, go to sleep, and the next day you are waking up with a vision that I'm going to pick up from where I left off. And each day is another day, and it's really, I think, helpful to think about time in terms of days. Some tips on calendar management. So this is a hopefully one that's easy to remember. Find, book, share. So find any conflicts you have in your calendar, book out time for your deep work, and you can also consider sharing calendars for visibility with people that may need to know your whereabouts and may need to know what you're working on. Meeting best practices. A lot of our meetings take place over Zoom these days or Teams, and I'll have something to say about that shortly. But it's really important to have a clear agenda, and ideally share your agenda beforehand with those attending the meeting. Especially if you're the facilitator or chair of the meeting, don't let your plan get hijacked by attendees. This can be challenging, but one has to be assertive and goal-oriented and keep the group focused on what the agenda for the meeting is. It's very important to action items after a meeting, otherwise it was just a waste of time. One must send in written form the items agreed upon to all the attendees of a meeting, to-do lists, and roles and responsibilities. Also bear in mind that others are busy and they have their own priorities and tasks. So there's always going to be a degree of follow-up required. So one might also have a list of high priority things that you might need to follow up on. When it comes to virtual meetings, it is generally considered international best practice to keep one's video on. This is a challenging one, and I think there's the temptation to put the video off, but the temptation there is then that you start working on other things. You're muted and your video is off, and you're actually only paying attention with half an ear. And one has to do some self-reflection there, whether that's really effective. Because if you wanted to attend the meeting, then optimize that time in the meeting for the meeting outcomes. So while you're in the meeting, you're taking your notes and you're preparing your action items that you're going to send right after the meeting. So you engaged in the activity, in the task. You're not distracted with something else. And keeping the camera on is a helpful way to maintain accountability for that. You can use the features and it keeps it interactive and fun. Clap your hands, thumbs up, raise your hand if you want to raise a point or ask a question. You can use the heart if you really like something. The chat for quick questions, also a helpful way to share links because someone can go to the meeting afterwards, especially in Teams, and see what the links that were shared were. If you're in a noisy environment, always bear in mind that it's really difficult for a facilitator or chair if there's noise coming from another attendee, and it always interrupts that smooth flow of operations. So-and-so, please mute, etc. Some note-taking tips. So it's important to take quality notes. You want to share these quickly. We always want to be hot on the topic, and It's no good waiting a long period of time while someone active memory about what was discussed fades and is forgotten, and then your notes are no longer really relevant if you're planning to share them long after a meeting. You can get apps and things to assist. A lot of people these days use an AI for note taking during such meetings. That's very effective. And then you can simply download the transcript and edit it into a style, or add detail that you found, or your own points of reflection that you had during the meeting. I'll emphasize this point again. It's really important to do this as quick as possible after a meeting, and ideally within a day of having a meeting that you've especially if that was an action or planning meeting. We want to remind people of what it was about, the date, the discussion points, any decisions made, and the kind of action items and people assigned um, to a particular task. Remember, if you're going to use digital tools for note taking, it's always important that people actually have access, and that's specifically relevant to Google. If you're going to share a link to something, be sure that someone has been added, their email address, they have permission, or alternatively share the open link where then anyone with the link can view the document. That's a little bit less secure, but it might be more time saving. Or whatever other application you use, make sure that people have an account or um, uh, access to it. So it can become a challenge if we want to explore new applications, but not a lot of people in our team are using that particular application. Then one also has to consider compatibility when it comes to using more advanced digital systems of note taking, as opposed to analog forms where I just write down my notes and then send them on email. Multitasking. I think I spoke to this a little bit, but again, try to set up a daily kind of plan of action. Um, Avoid getting flustered. Stay committed to your goals that you set in the morning. And if something's really important, it's important to communicate. I really recommend communicating. Honesty is the best policy. Indicate your priorities and discuss them with your manager in terms of what their priorities are. And that can save a lot of stress and anxiety, because we might find that we thought something was important, but it's actually not so important. And our manager or another member of the team would prefer our expertise on another task. And that sometimes requires a change of direction and a change of plan. And we also need to be adaptable to change. It's often said that we are uncomfortable with change when we are not the author of the change. And that is something that all of us have to work on, where if change comes from an external source, we must be adaptable to be able to say, well, that's fine. I'm going to change my priorities for the day, for the team, for collective benefit, for our collective success. Always try to practice mindfulness. This is really hard. It's easy to say, but it requires a lot of mental discipline. There are some physical things you can do if you're really feeling overwhelmed. You can take a short walk. You can breathe in and out 10 times and hold your breath. Or you can allocate specific time for quiet and disconnecting from screens or technology or noise, just to settle yourself. Different people find different things helpful. So be exploratory, be experimental, find what works best for you. And then there's a big tip. As I said before, batch similar tasks together. So you got a whole lot of reading to do the whole lot of reading in a time frame. If you've got a lot of quantitative things to do keep your mind in the mathematics mode and then you don't have to change gears and do the numbers for a allocated amount of time. Some of this might be the whole day. If it's a big task, you want to allocate a whole day to something and do it properly. You might allocate another day to reporting. So you might be writing different reports, but your brain is staying in the writing mode and you don't need to change gears and you're not wasting time. And then again with research and reading, and that's using your critical faculties and comparing information. You want to stay in that same mode when you are doing different tasks. So batch tasks together. Before we move on, let me just check some of the questions. That we've got. Some of the common workflow inefficiencies we've observed in nonprofits and how can they be addressed? That's a very important question. I think that we'll come to it a little bit later in terms of some strategies we have for different roles and different organization sizes. And it's a lot of this is also dependent on the resources available to you and having that adaptive mindset of identifying the challenges and seeing what's feasible to do in your situation. Yes, that's another important one where there's multiple cross-cutting lines of delegation and responsibility. It can be confusing. And this is why I reiterate the importance of communication and putting clear expectations, who's assigned to something, what is the deadline, making follow-ups. It should be standard practice that we do the courtesy of providing our recipient with our information, just as we would have done with a face-to-face conversation, where there would have been that reciprocal back and forth. In an email, it's more one way and it's slower. So we have to bear in mind, it's not a WhatsApp conversation. We don't want to bombard someone's inbox with short messages back and forth. We want to lay out our plan succinctly so that a person can read it clearly and simply acknowledge it. And also, I'll just add a point regarding replying to emails. Reply to emails when it's actually a reply is important. With the new React features, that internally and sometimes externally it also works. But with an external email, one might want to consider a formal reply. But internally, one can use the thumbs up, a yes. It's a form of acknowledgement. I've seen your email, I've read it, and I'm going to respond accordingly. I'm not going to fill up your inbox with a thank you or a noted or a form of communication which it's common for our speech and it's polite, but it's not really effective in the digital age. And we must distinguish between our apps that are on our phone and apps that are on our PCs. And when it comes to a phone conversation, it's much more customary to have shorter messages and it'd be back and forth, especially if we've got blue ticks enabled, then also someone can see that someone has read the message. When it comes to email, we want to consider not filling up someone's email with unnecessary responses. We can wait on it a day and rather reply with the feedback that they've requested. I hope that's helpful. I'm going to check the chat. So those are from the Q&A. Yes, blocking out time. I think that personally, we're going to get to it. Some 4 strategies for optimization. I personally find blocking out time and having a plan for the day is very effective. Okay, so let's move on with some more technology features. So we can use browser extensions. These Grammarly is for grammar, Zotero is for research. Our devices can help capture our passwords. A proviso here that I would say is when you're moving machines, you want to consider saving a hard copy of those passwords. Simply view them and write them down. It's going to be easier when you migrate between machines. Also bear in mind that some ad blockers block certain interactive platforms, so you might need to pause them. And then in terms of your browser itself, you can use bookmarking and shortcuts to help you be more efficient. My encouragement is to automate wherever possible. So integrate all your preferred apps, master the Microsoft suite and the specific applications you use. As we discussed when it came to formatting our various documents and creating templates, we want to eliminate having to do the same thing over and over again every time. And that's why it makes more sense to prioritize some time to setting up your templates. And don't reinvent the wheel. Google is out there. If you've got a problem or a question, or other search engines as well, search it. Humanity's been around for a long time, and there is sure to have been someone that had exactly the same problem as you, and they may have already come up with a solution. This is a little bit more about just your physical space. So you want to minimize distractions. You might want to consider putting your phone on silent for a certain amount of time. You can also turn off the bell notification on your machine. So while you're working on something else, there's not that sound coming in, bing, bing, that an email has received. You're going to look at it later. Internally speaking, you might want to consider turning on your out of office. I wouldn't do that for external communication, so just set it for internal. You're communicating internally that you're working on a deep focused task and you're going to reply to an email later, even though you're not out of office. You're in the office and you're online, but you're working on a task, and you can communicate within the team that this is what you're doing. And you're available for checking their emails later. And you can also indicate when you'll be available for interactive tasks again. Bear in mind your posture and your, are you drinking enough fluids? When we're stressed out, some of the natural inclination is to drink more coffee or more tea, but sometimes that can actually stress us out more. So bear in mind your own body and be connected with yourself and know what works for you. And it's always important to ensure that you've got enough oxygen. And if you're feeling tired, sometimes it's just a glass of water or some fresh air that you need. This is a big one that I find helpful. Change your location for if you run into a creativity block, move to the shared space if your office has shared space. Or if someone is out of office or on leave, send them a quick WhatsApp message. Do you mind if I use your desk? I just want a change of scenery. As they say, a change in perspective is as good as a change in the world. And another good expression is change is as good as a holiday. And mix up your routine. Don't do a whole lot of days deep diving and deep tasking all consecutively. Do a multitasking day, do a single tasking day. Find out what works for you. Work-life balance. In terms of getting things done, I would recommend the I get to mindset. So that cultivates gratitude as opposed to I have to do something. I've got all these things that I have to do. And that's immediately giving you an emotional response in your body of resentment, of there's this hurdle I have to climb. But if we start from the position of I get to do this with my day, then that gratitude is a better place to start from. It already creates mental clarity. It creates the conditions of excitement and enjoyment to get something done. take breaks, unplug, recharge. Hard to do, easy to say. It requires discipline. Self-care is important. When we're looking at performance and optimization, we have to think like athletes. They look after themselves and they are really disciplined in terms of what they're taking in, what they're putting out, and how they're managing their schedule to be able to compete in professional sports. So the same approach can be applied to your mind and mental tasks. And we are in bodies, so we have to take care of our bodies. Celebrate your wins. Congratulate yourself on the things you do well. Don't beat yourself up. I think that many of us tend to be our own worst critics, especially in this day and age where there's so much competitiveness, and there's so much indications of people doing well. It's easy to say I'm not good enough, and so it's important to put your self-criticism in context and perhaps use a trusted person, as a sounding board for saying, how do you think I'm doing? Where do you think my real areas of improvement are? And I would just always recommend communicate honestly. That's going to serve you well in the long term. Resilience and perseverance. These are another sort of mental places that help your overall performance over time. So we can have shortfalls in a short space of time. On any given day, we're not perfect. We slip up, we make mistakes, we forget things. We're not at our best level of performance, energy-wise or creativity-wise. But over the long term, we can cultivate resilience and perseverance. And perseverance wins the race. So always be willing to fail and make mistakes. Cultivate that willingness to keep on getting up after you fall down, and always see opportunities as a growth opportunity for doing better next time. Some tips about time allocation. So we can, I would advise, set aside some amount of time that is feasible for you, given your workload, to acquire something new. Challenge yourself. Our brains are like putty. The more we blend them and move them and exercise them in different directions, the more connections they make, and that's going to help us acquire new skills. One might consider a personal development plan. You often hear this spoken about in terms of where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? I think that's a bit long horizon. I think humans, it's hard to see so far in the future. I think personally, I find it better to have a plan for the year. What key things you want to do developmentally for your person and your own life. And that's going to help you give you energy to your work. So if you feel like you're meeting your own personal objectives, then you have more to give to others, to your profession, etc. Balance skills acquisition, new skills versus deepening and honing your existing skills. So as I was going through those utilities that we have for Microsoft, Word, Outlook, PowerPoint, each of those, I would say, don't be satisfied with your current level of expertise. We all have different levels of expertise. I'm not really great at PowerPoint or Excel. I'm better at Outlook and Word. And it's about the task that we do more often, but I'm passionate about Word and learning more about it. So for example, in the future, if we did a more practical session on such trainings, I would feel confident running one about Word, but I wouldn't feel comfortable doing one about Excel because I don't use it that often. So that's about deepening the skills where you use something a lot. It's important to know the full scope of what something can do. Okay, now it's a little opportunity for something different. Just going to check the chat. Yeah, that's a good point. I really believe that celebrating your successes and when you do well, it promotes your morale and gives you more motivation. So these are just 4 different types of techniques that you can consider. And these might be helpful in terms of a starting place for how you're going to think about improving your efficiency. So there's the Pomodoro technique, 25-minute intervals, 5-minute breaks in between, and then you do 4 Pomodoros in a succession, and then you take a longer break. For me personally, this is too much break time. I prefer to take a short stand-up break, perhaps on the hour. And I personally find that I like to focus for about 45 minutes at a time. So these things are not like the be all and end all of anything. We need to find out what works for us. There's the Eisenhower matrix. This one is quite useful. So it's about categorizing tasks based on urgency and importance. So if it's urgent and important, you do it immediately. If it's important but not urgent, you schedule for later. If it's urgent but not important, delegate if possible. So if it's possible to delegate it, delegate it. If it's neither urgent nor important, eliminate it. For example, in the email context, we may have subscribed to a newsletter of an organization, but we're only interested in certain news items, and we get their emails all the time. So we need to be able to scan it, see if it's relevant, delete if it's not. If it is relevant and you want to look at it later, you could mark it as unread, or you could flag it to follow up later in the week. But we need to have that kind of decisiveness to act, to say, this is the combination of urgency and importance, and I'm making a decision about it. There's the inbox zero. This is one that I love and I endeavor to achieve. It's about deleting unnecessary emails. You delegate. If something is relevant to someone else, just forward it immediately. If it's going to take less than 2 minutes to respond. And defer. You can move it to your task list. It requires more time. And do would be handle immediately if urgent and quick. And that I find really helps reduce that sense of overwhelm, and increases your productivity, because if you don't have that huge backlog of emails, you can be rest assured in your mind to allocate the time to that deep focus work. There's not that fear in the back of your mind that you've missed something, or there's something important that you haven't attended to. So my personal preference is inbox zero. Also, time blocking is something I like. So we've spoken to this a lot. It's about dedicating those different blocks of time to different types of tasks, meetings, breaks, focus work. Yeah, communication also comes into play. For me personally, I prefer to have a meeting in the afternoon, because in the morning, that is my creative hours where I feel more creative. In the afternoon, I rather have more operational or administrative kind of thinking that doesn't die down by the end of the day, but my creativity dries up after the morning hours. So if I'm going to do creative tasks, I want to do it in the morning. So it's about knowing ourselves. And if we have those regular meetings, which then become a disruption to our efficiency, we need to communicate it with that colleague or that person and say, can we do a workaround? Because I need to have these hours for this, and I would prefer, if it doesn't inconvenience you, that we schedule this for later in the afternoon or another day. More on managing urgency and importance. So just distinguish it, being able to distinguish between what's urgent and important. The power of no, it is so important. We have to be able to exercise our free will and assertiveness within reasonable boundaries, and say no to things that are low priority, that don't achieve your mission, that don't achieve your KPIs, that don't serve the organization's bigger impact. They might be just nice to haves. And we have to be able to say, we can only do that when we have the time and resources. We use timesheets here at Seriti, and there are digital tools as well for tracking your tasks over a day. Um, I do find that completing this on a daily basis really helps to see what you've done in the course of a day. And then when you look back at the month, you can have a reflection on the amount of time that you allocated to certain tasks. So again, if you want to do time tracking, do it on a daily basis, even if it's not something that you have to do. Take note of what the last 15 minutes of day, what did I do? How much time did I allocate to different things, and did it work out? Um, and where should I make changes to improve tomorrow? Adopt a project management life cycle to our collaborative endeavors. Break up things, allocate things to those that are most good at doing something. Communicate your strengths. That helps split up the tasks. More on self-management. Just always just regularly assessing and thinking about continuous improvement. Stay open to new tools and methodologies. Practice mindfulness, manage your stress, avoid the digital distractions. These devices, we are so used to them, but a lot of the science, if you go out there and look, will tell you that in some ways they're like drugs. They give us a sense of enjoyment when we see our posts on social media being liked, or we've received a message from someone that's important to us. Those are great things, but they can become a distraction. So we meant to just check something on the cell phone for 1 minute, and we stayed there 5-10 minutes. So we really have to think about that time, as if we add it up, how much time are we wasting on things that are related to not being disciplined? And also something that's really catching on is the idea of practicing regular detoxes from this digital environment. So you, by all means, use these tools and embrace them, but also make sure that you have time to switch off and disconnect from such technology, to gather yourself within again. Building networks that are supportive, cultivate different kinds of relationships. There's different dynamics. Someone else is a mentor to you, but you may be a mentor to others. There might be other relationships that are more equal and peer level. If we've got all those kind of diverse interactions, those are all opportunities to learn. And these days, there's plenty of groups out there. Again, on LinkedIn, there's groups for almost anything. And with LinkedIn, it's difficult to start out, but try to be active, try to comment on other people's things, try to post, and make the platform more interactive. Okay, now is another opportunity for getting some feedback. So we're going to do another poll. So these are just some questions to reflect on this morning's session. Which area of workflow optimization are you most excited to implement? Microsoft Office tips and tricks, time management techniques, digital organization, and then those personal productivity habits. And then those 4 things that I discussed, the Pomodoro technique, the Eisenhower, the zero inbox, the time blocking, which are you most likely to try out? So just a reminder, the Pomodoro was the 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break, and you do 4 of them consecutively, and then you take a 30-minute break. The Eisenhower is that delegating. So it's urgent and important. It's important but not urgent, so I schedule later, etc., etc. So it's that matrix of dividing tasks by important and I must do it, not important at all, delete. And then the time blocking, we've discussed that, and the zero inbox is keeping your inbox free. So we're getting voting happening. Then the last question, in your experience, what's the most significant barrier to implementing new productivity strategies? Lack of time to learn and implement new methods. This is a very common one. We put all our work into all our time into the things we need to do, and then we might not have time to implement new methods. Resistance has changed both within ourselves and within our organizations. Overwhelming number of opportunities. We've covered so much today, and as I said, this is an introductory session, and I encourage you to fill out the evaluation form at the end and give us feedback on any specific things that you would want to learn more about. And we can think of lining up another series of workshops that are more practical, set up in meeting format, where there is more opportunity for asking questions and getting hands-on. Difficulty maintaining new habits long term. So we've got 57% of you have participated. If we can get a few more selections in, that would be great. If some more could just select your answers, that would be great. %57 still, 64%. Just a few more votes, please. 71%. Again, I just want to make sure that at least 3/4 of us have responded. Okay, I'm going to call it. Okay, very interesting. A diverse spread of excitement. I'm grateful to see that. So yeah, I expected that there would be more interest in the applications in more detail, and some more interest in digital organization. Time blocking, most popular area of interest, and the Pomodoro technique. I wouldn't have thought that. Interesting. And then quite a diverse spread in terms of barriers, with most people finding that it's a lack of time to learn new methods, and then also feeling overwhelmed by the number of options. So thank you for participating in that. Okay, moving on. We've got a few more slides. Some key takeaways from today that I'd like you to consider. Look, leverage, prioritize, cultivate balance. So look for new ways to optimize. Again, going back to that thing we started with, the curious mind. Leverage, look at the tech tools that you can use to avoid becoming overwhelmed. Prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. Do the things that have high impact and that are goal-aligned activities, and keep those at the top of your list. Cultivate that curious and resilient mindset, and balance your productivity with your well-being. Here we get to some practical aspects that one might consider depending on your size. So for small 1 to 10 employees at a nonprofit, you want to think of more versatile approaches to incorporating optimization. Also, low cost would be a consideration, and emphasize cross-training in your teams, sharing skills as a way to optimize, and prioritize that donor management and volunteers, because your small team, you would be in a place to benefit from any kind of technical assistance that could be offered from a volunteer. When it comes to more medium-sized organizations, 11 to 50, you can start thinking about implementing more kind of robust project management tools. You can consider buying some particular apps and such that might be relevant to you, and develop those standardized processes, because now you're a bigger team. It requires that some things are in place so that there's not duplication and lots of cross communication to the point of inefficiency. And then that interdepartmental communication and collaboration. For large organizations, 50 plus, you could consider thinking of yourself now at an enterprise level, that you really need to invest in the kind of tools and equipment that are going to empower your team and equip them. And you're always dedicated to that improvement, increase, continuous improvement. And then another thing is to consider when it comes to decision making, the larger you get, your decisions now need to be based on data as a more objective way to make decisions about your impact that you're achieving. These are some things that you can consider in more detail in your own time, but all of these things are different depending on our role. So when we think of optimization from the point of view of a director, the considerations that one might have there that are going to be high priority are you going to be your strategy as an organization and stakeholder management and getting those optimized, as well as your organizational overviews, HR, finance, looking at everything from the high level perspective. Is it optimized? And is your board reporting and communication optimized? Looking from a program manager point of view, then the actual outputs and outcomes and impact of the projects you're managing is going to be the focus of your optimization. So you want to optimize your actual project management tools and your tracking, and streamlining your beneficiary data, etc., and your analysis thereof. In the fundraising team, you want to really concentrate on your donor relations, being responsive and timely to requests, and really working on a schedule, prioritizing all the various deadlines that are out there, setting a schedule for when you're going to apply for different opportunities. In the finance team, it's critical that there's efficiency in terms of all the financial reporting and processing, expenses, income, other kinds of things that take place on a finance level, that everything is taking place efficiently and the most optimal, because that can be a lot of repetitive tasks, a lot of the same function repeating over and over and over again. So if it's optimized, then that can really save time and enable the team to innovate in other areas. On your marketing and communications team, then your priority is going to be content management and the calendar and managing social media in an efficient way. So you could look at tools and processes that are going to improve your efficiency in that regard. So just thinking about this whole big picture of optimization of workflows in terms of what your role is important. We may also want to consider metrics to start measuring how well we're doing. This is getting in more depth, and it may not be necessary, but if it becomes a critical area of your work portfolio, then it's going to be important to have a measurement, and especially if you're going to be assessed on your performance, then a metric may be helpful. You can read this in your own time, but you could get efficiency metrics, you can get fundraising metrics, program impact metrics, staff satisfaction and productivity, stakeholder engagement, compliance reporting, innovation and adaptability. So optimization really covers everything, and every area of our work, every role, everything can be thought of in terms of a performance mindset and improving our accuracy at hitting the bullseye. Again, in your own time, these are some case studies that I've put together for you. And when you get the presentation, you can read more about them. But these are quite diverse kind of accounts of different organizations and the approaches they took to optimization. So there was a Google 20% rule at Google, and that enabled some innovation within the team where 20% of the time staff were allowed to allocate to their own projects. There's a long history of case studies on the Japanese manufacturing sector, and in particular with Toyota, there was this idea of Kaizen, and that's the idea of continuous improvement. And generally, it's about giving a platform to colleagues and workers on the shop floor or on the manufacturing level to give the strategic oversight and the executives ideas about how things could be improved. Like, for example, if there's an assembly line of cars traveling along a belt, there might be a reason to lift it up or put it in an angle to enable people to work more comfortably and more efficiently. Instead of having to bend over, they're able to stay standing while they do their task. So it's things like that that can help organizations innovate and have ways to improve. There was the Spotify quad model. It had benefits, but it also fell apart in terms of autonomy and a little bit of too much division. But basically, there were these cross-functional squads that could work on different projects, and they had some level of autonomy and decision making. So it's great for innovation, but then you can run to the risk of sort of losing control of your main direction. And then there's a good nonprofit example just in terms of integrating technology. So there's this UK-based charity, but they work all around the world, Charity Water, and they had a long history of including GIS systems in mapping out the water and the pumps, and that's one approach they took to improving their impact was integrating technology. But then in a later project with Accenture, they used Internet of Things, which really means that all the devices are interconnected and sharing data. And that was able to give like real-time information on a whole network of pumps in rural Ethiopia. And that gave information on like downtime and all that kind of thing. So it improved the efficiency. So you can see the technology, both within the organization, but also within projects, can be vital to increasing impact. And now, instead of giving you a list of podcasts or books or blogs or things that I like, given this whole presentation, I encourage you to go and find and follow your own bent. There are many books and resources out there. Use those Google's tips when you get this presentation. Try some of those prompts and find things that you're exactly looking for. When it comes to these kind of things, we need to find things that resonate with us and that work with you and that meet your needs. So the best way to put today's presentation into practice is to encourage you to go out there and find the things that are going to work for you. And with that, I thank you for making the time to join today's session. I'll just check the question box again. No, we didn't get any more questions. I hope today's session was helpful. My colleague has just shared the evaluation form in the link. Please do complete it. It's really going to help us think about the next series for Seriti Partner and what we offer and how we go about delivering information that's helpful, but also looking at more practical aspects and where you might like more practical offerings. So please complete that evaluation form. We are ahead of time, so you can reclaim your time. I thank you very much for joining us this morning, and I hope that you benefited from today's session.